The great station floated in space like a silver wheel, spinning slowly around a dying star. Inside its massive halls, representatives from 200 different worlds gathered for an emergency meeting. Some walked on legs, others floated, and a few existed as clouds of thought held together by energy fields. They all came because war was coming, and the Galactic Council needed to stop it. Sat in the corner reserved for Earth's delegation. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and gray streaks in her black hair. For 20 years, she had represented humanity in these halls. She had learned to stay quiet and watch, only speaking when her words would matter. Today, she watched the ambassador with growing concern. There were tall creatures, covered in thick scales that shimmered blue and green under the station's lights. They were warriors, proud of their strength and their endless victories. For 1,000 years, they had conquered every enemy they faced. Now they wanted more territory, and they did not care who stood in their way. The ambassador stood at the center of the chamber. His voice boomed through translators, filling the space with arrogance. The Empire has made its decision. The system will belong to us. We have given the humans 2 weeks to leave. After that, any who remain will be removed by force. Murmurs rippled through the assembled delegates. The system was small, containing only 2 human mining colonies. By galactic standards, it was nothing. But it was the principle that mattered. They were announcing their intent to take whatever they wanted, and if the council allowed it, there would be no end to their expansion. An ancient being rose from the center of the chamber. It looked like a sculpture made of crystal, its surface reflecting light in rainbow patterns. This was the eldest member of the council, a creature that had lived for 10,000 years and witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations. When it spoke, everyone listened. Ambassador of the Empire, I must offer you a warning. There is one species in this council that you must never provoke into war. They are young, yes. Their numbers are small and their territory is limited, but they are dangerous in ways you cannot imagine. The ambassador laughed, a harsh clicking sound that needed no translation. You speak of the humans, those weak creatures who arrived in our galaxy only 200 years ago. They have no claws, no natural armor, and they tire so easily. My people could crush them without effort. The crystal being's light dimmed, a sign of sadness. You see only their physical form. You do not understand what they are. Humans do not fight wars as we do. They do not seek honor or glory in battle. They fight to survive, and they do not stop until the threat is completely destroyed. Another delegate spoke up, a floating jellyfish-like creature from the water worlds. The elder speaks truth. 30 cycles ago, pirates attacked a human colony. They killed 17,000 humans and stole supplies. The pirates thought they would face a ransom demand or perhaps a small military response. They were wrong. The jellyfish creature's tentacles twitched, remembering. The humans tracked every single ship, every base, every hiding spot that belonged to those pirates. It took them 6 years. They crossed 40 star systems. When they were done, nothing remained. No ships, no stations, not even distress beacons, just wreckage floating in space. Kept her face calm, but inside she felt the familiar weight of that memory. She had been a junior diplomat then, watching as humanity demonstrated what it would do when its people were murdered. The galaxy had been shocked. Most species fought wars with rules, with honor, with limits. Humanity fought wars to win, completely and permanently. The ambassador waved a clawed hand dismissively. Pirates are not warriors. The Empire has 300 worlds under our control. Our fleet numbers in the tens of thousands. The humans have perhaps 500 military ships scattered across their small territory. This is not a fight. It is an extermination waiting to happen. The Crystal Elder tried one more time. I have seen many species make this mistake. They look at humanity and see weakness because humans are not physically imposing. They do not see the minds that can plan operations across decades. They do not see the creativity that turns every resource into a weapon. They do not see the absolute determination that drives humans to finish what they start, no matter the cost. But the ambassador was done listening. The Empire has spoken, 2 weeks. That is all the time they have. The council session ended in failure. Delegates filed out slowly, many casting sympathetic glances toward. They felt bad for the humans, believing they were about to be conquered by a superior force. Only a few, the oldest species who had lived long enough to see patterns repeat, looked worried for entirely different reasons. Finally stood and approached the Crystal Elder. Up close, she could see her reflection 1,000 times in its faceted surface. "Thank you for trying," she said quietly. "I am sorry I could not convince them," the elder replied. "Will your people evacuate?" His expression was unreadable. "The colonies will be evacuated, yes. No civilian lives will be lost if we can prevent it, but evacuate? No, we will not abandon our territory. They will learn the same lesson the pirates learned." "I feared you would say that," the elder said. "I have studied your species, ambassador. I have read your history, the wars you fought against yourselves before you reached the stars. You nearly destroyed your entire world 3 separate times. You invented weapons that could end all life on your planet, and you came within minutes of using them. Yet somehow you survived, learned, and grew. That history makes you the most terrifying species I have ever encountered." Allowed herself a small, sad smile. "We learned from our mistakes. We learned that wars must be won quickly and decisively, with minimal casualties on both sides. We learned that half measures only prolong suffering. And we learned that the best way to avoid war is to be so obviously dangerous that no one wants to fight you. They are about to receive an education." She returned to her ship and sent an encrypted message to Earth. The message was simple: they refused to listen. Proceed with preparations. On Earth, in the buried command centers beneath mountain ranges, plans that had been developed over decades were activated. Admiral read the message and turned to her staff. "The fleet will arrive in 14 days. We have that long to be ready. Everyone knows their jobs. Execute the plan." Captain, commander of humanity's deep reconnaissance fleet, reviewed his orders one final time. His ships were already moving into position, hidden by technology the rest of the galaxy did not know existed. "We're not going to fight them ship to ship," he told his crew. "We're going to teach them why picking a fight with humans was the worst decision their empire ever made." Engineers supervised the final preparations on the mining colonies. Civilians were being evacuated on transport ships, leaving behind infrastructure that had taken decades to build. But that infrastructure would not go to waste. Every building, every tunnel, every piece of equipment was being carefully prepared for a different purpose. When they arrived, they would find a surprise waiting for them. The countdown had begun. In 2 weeks, they would learn what the Galactic Council had tried to tell them. Humanity did not fight wars for glory or honor. They fought wars to win, and they were very, very good at it. The galaxy was about to witness what happened when you dragged humanity into a war they did not want. The Empire had been warned. They had not listened. Now they would learn. The fleet emerged from hyperspace exactly on schedule, 14 days after their ultimatum. 300 warships filled the void around the system, their weapons powered and ready. It was a show of overwhelming force, meant to terrify any enemy into immediate surrender. Fleet Commander stood on his command deck and felt satisfaction flow through him. This would be an easy victory, another glorious conquest to add to his record. But something was wrong. The human colonies should have been bustling with desperate evacuation efforts. Instead, the long-range scanners showed almost no activity. The settlements appeared empty. Only one human ship remained in orbit, a small diplomatic vessel that seemed to be waiting for them. Opened a communication channel. A human woman appeared on his screen, her face calm and professional. She wore a simple uniform with no decorations. "I am Colonial Administrator. I am authorized to speak for the Republic of Earth in this system." "Where are your people?" demanded. "Have they fled in fear?" His expression did not change. "All civilians have been evacuated safely, yes. We protect our people, Commander, but we have not fled. This system belongs to humanity and we will not surrender it." Laughed the sound harsh and mocking. "You have one ship, I have 300. What do you imagine you can do to stop us?" "I can give you one final chance to turn your fleet around and return home," said. Her voice was steady, without anger or fear. "The Galactic Council warned you. Never drag humanity into war. We will end it our way. This is your last opportunity to avoid what comes next." "Your threats mean nothing," snarled. He gave the order, and dozens of his ships opened fire on his vessel. The human ship's shields flared brightly, absorbing the first impacts. Then it turned and fled, jumping into hyperspace just before its shields failed. Felt vindicated. The humans talked tough, but when faced with real power, they ran like cowards. "Begin landing operations," he commanded. "Secure both colonies. Kill anyone who resists." The troop carriers descended toward the two mining colonies. Thousands of warriors prepared to storm the settlements, expecting either terrified humans begging for mercy or perhaps a small group of defenders making a symbolic last stand. What they found was worse than either option. The colonies were completely empty, not just of people but of anything valuable. Every piece of useful equipment, every computer system, every tool had been removed. The soldiers walked through ghost towns, their boots echoing on metal floors. It felt wrong, like a trap waiting to spring. The trap sprang 30 minutes later. The first explosion came from deep underground, a massive detonation that sent tremors through the entire colony. Engineer had spent 2 weeks placing charges in carefully calculated locations, and now his work bore fruit. The mining tunnels that stretched for kilometers beneath the surface became a network of cascading failures. Each explosion triggered the next, and the next, creating a chain reaction that tore through the planet's crust. The colony began to collapse. Buildings fell into suddenly appearing sinkholes. Lava burst up from fractured rock, spraying superheated stone into the atmosphere. The soldiers who had been exploring the underground sections died instantly, crushed or incinerated. Those on the surface scrambled for their ships, but more explosions kept erupting, each one carefully timed to maximize chaos. On the second colony world, the trap was different but equally devastating. The humans had weaponized the reactor cores that powered the mining equipment. When they detonated, they did not just explode. They created a radiation pulse that would make the entire planet uninhabitable for centuries. The ships in orbit detected the surge and immediately pulled back, but 40 vessels were too slow. The radiation fried their electronics, leaving them drifting in space, powerless and vulnerable. Commander watched in horror as his easy victory turned into a disaster. He had lost 40 ships and several thousand ground troops in a matter of minutes. The humans had not fought them. They had simply made the territory worthless and deadly to claim. "This is not warfare," roared at his officers. "This is cowardice. They destroy their own worlds rather than face us in honorable combat." But his officers had no answers. They had been trained to fight enemies who stood and fought back. They had no experience with an enemy who turned victory into poison. Back on Earth, Admiral received the reports with satisfaction. The colonies had been sacrificed, but the trap had worked perfectly. Now came the second phase. "Captain, you are authorized to begin operations. Show them what real humans warfare looks like." Captain's reconnaissance fleet had been waiting in dark space, their ships powered down and invisible to sensors. The technology that made them invisible was humanity's most carefully guarded secret. While other species relied on energy signatures and quantum scanning to detect ships, humans had learned to hide in plain sight. Their ships absorbed radiation rather than reflecting it. Their hulls were coated with materials that bent sensor waves around them, and their power systems ran so quietly that they were undetectable at any useful range. The Empire had supply lines stretching across dozens of systems, bringing food, weapons, and fuel to their military. These supply lines had never been attacked before. They controlled their territory so completely that they saw no need for heavy escorts on cargo ships. That was their mistake. The first supply ship disappeared without sending a distress signal. One moment it was traveling through hyperspace, the next it simply ceased to exist. They assumed a mechanical failure. Ships were lost occasionally, even in peaceful times. The second ship vanished the next day. Then a supply depot exploded. Then a communication relay went dark. Then 3 more cargo ships disappeared. Within a week, the Empire lost over 100 supply vessels and 24 stations. Panic began to spread. The military leadership could not understand what was happening. They saw no attackers, no evidence of weapons fire, no wreckage that suggested combat. Ships and stations were simply there one moment and gone the next. Intelligence officer had spent months studying logistics, identifying every vulnerable point in their supply network. Now her teams were feeding targeting data to captains' ships. Each attack was surgical, precise, and devastating. The human ships would emerge from dark space, destroy their target in seconds, and vanish again before any help could arrive. They responded by heavily fortifying their supply routes. They assigned battle cruisers to escort every cargo ship. They ringed their stations with defensive fleets. It consumed enormous resources and stretched their military thin, but they believed it would stop the attacks. It did not. The humans simply struck at the new weak points created by shifting all those ships around. A border patrol station left undefended was destroyed. A repair facility that had been stripped of guards exploded. Everywhere the reinforced, the humans attacked somewhere else. Commander was summoned back to explain his failures. He stood before the War Council, a gathering of the Empire's most powerful military leaders, and tried to justify the disaster. The humans do not fight, he protested. They hide, they sabotage, they strike from shadows and run before we can respond. This is not warfare, this is terrorism. The head of the War Council, an ancient warrior covered in scars from 100 battles, listened without expression. When finished, the old warrior spoke quietly. You are right. This is not warfare as we understand it, but that is the point. The humans are not fighting on our terms. They are fighting on their own terms, using their own rules, and by those rules they are winning. Then what do we do? Asked desperately. The old warrior considered. We have 2 choices. We can admit defeat, negotiate peace, and hope they accept our surrender. Or we can strike at their heart, force them into the kind of battle we can win. If we destroy Earth itself, the humans will have no choice but to face us directly. The War Council debated for hours, but the decision was ultimately obvious. Culture valued strength above all else. Backing down would be seen as weakness, and weakness was not tolerated. They would gather their main fleet, every available ship in the Empire, and attack Earth itself. Surely the humans would defend there. Surely they would have to fight directly. The order went out. Every warship was recalled from border patrols, garrison duty, and defensive positions. They would mass into a single, overwhelming force and end this war in one decisive battle. Intelligence officer detected the fleet movements within hours. She immediately alerted command. In the underground war room beneath the mountains of Earth, Admiral gathered her senior officers. Captain was there, an engineer and weapons specialist, and dozens of others who had been planning for exactly this moment. They're doing exactly what we predicted, Admiral said, her voice calm. They're bringing their entire fleet to us. This is what we've been working toward. Operation Final Lesson is now active. Captain allowed himself a thin smile. We've been herding them like sheep for months. Every attack, every raid, every destroyed supply depot was designed to make them angry and frustrated. Angry enemies make mistakes, and they've made the biggest mistake possible. They've abandoned their defensive positions to come to us. How long until they arrive? Someone asked. 6 days, reported. The fleet is massive. 3,000 warships, the largest force they've ever assembled. If we fought them ship to ship, we would lose. Good thing we're not going to fight them ship to ship, Admiral said. She looked around the room at the people who had worked so hard to make this plan possible. 6 days, people. We have 6 days to prepare for the most important battle in human history. Let's make sure we win it. The Armada emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system like a swarm of angry hornets. 3,000 warships, each one a monument to military power and warrior pride. It was the largest fleet ever assembled by the Empire, representing centuries of conquest and domination. Fleet Commander had been given one final chance to redeem himself by leading this ultimate attack. He stood on his command deck and felt confidence return to him. This was warfare as it should be. Not shadows and sabotage, but raw power meeting power. The humans would have to defend there, and when they did, superiority would crush them. The human defense fleet appeared from behind Earth's moon. Sensors counted them, 200 ships, maybe 250 at most, against 3,000. The odds were so overwhelming that it almost seemed unfair. Almost. They are fools, said to his officers. They could have fled, scattered to other colonies, preserved their fleet for another day. Instead, they make a symbolic last stand. We will grant them the honorable death they seek, then we will take their world. But as the fleet moved forward, something seemed wrong. The space between the two fleets was filled with debris, pieces of wrecked ships and destroyed stations from earlier battles. At least, that was what the sensors reported. It all looked like harmless wreckage, drifting metal that posed no threat to their advance. Engineer watched from a command center deep underground on Earth. Thousands of small objects floated in space, each one carefully positioned. To sensors, they looked like debris. In reality, each was a sophisticated drone, its true nature hidden by clever engineering and electronic camouflage. Had spent years designing them, and now he was about to see if they worked as planned. All drones are in position, he reported to Admiral, waiting for your command. Admiral watched the tactical display as the fleet pushed deeper into the solar system. They were confident, moving in tight formations that would allow them to bring overwhelming firepower to bear. That confidence was about to become their weakness. Wait until they're fully committed. We need them deep in the trap before we spring it. The fleet continued forward, and the human ships began to retreat slowly, appearing to give ground reluctantly. Smiled. The humans were trying to draw them closer to Earth's orbital defenses, hopping to even the odds. It would not work. His fleet could overwhelm any fixed defenses. Now, Admiral said quietly. The debris came alive. Thousands of drones activated simultaneously, their true nature revealed. They did not carry explosive warheads. Engineer had designed something far more effective. Each drone emitted a focused electromagnetic pulse, carefully tuned to overload power systems. Intelligence officers' team had spent months analyzing captured technology, finding the one critical weakness in their ship designs. The pulses hit the fleet like an invisible wave. Ship after ship went dark as their power distribution networks fried. Shields collapsed. Weapons went offline. Engines sputtered and died. Within 90 seconds, over 2,000 warships became floating hulks, their crews alive but helpless. Stared at his command screen in disbelief. His mighty fleet had been crippled without a single shot fired. Most of his ships were dead in space, drifting helplessly. Only the ships at the edges of the formation, those not fully surrounded by drones, retained power. Then Captain's voice came over an open channel, broadcast to every ship. Fleet, this is Captain of the Earth Defense Force. Your ships are disabled, but your crews are alive. We deliberately used weapons that would not kill you. Power down your remaining vessels and prepare to be escorted to neutral space. This war can end right now with no more deaths. The choice is yours. For a long moment there was silence. stared at his screens, his mind refusing to accept what had happened. His great fleet, the pride of the Empire, had been defeated in less than 2 minutes. Not destroyed, but neutralized with such precision that it could only be the result of months of planning. But his entire life had been built around the concept of strength and dominance. To surrender now would be to admit that everything he believed was wrong. He would rather die. "All functional ships attack," he commanded. We do not surrender to prey." 800 warships, the ones that had escaped the drone attack, surged forward. They were still a massive force, more than enough to destroy the smaller human fleet. But the human ships did not fight the way they expected. Captain had trained his fleet for exactly this moment. The human ships scattered in all directions, moving with precision and coordination that seemed impossible. Each human vessel led groups of ships into carefully prepared killing zones. Weapons specialist coordinated the battle from Earth's orbital command center. He had studied tactics for years and knew how they would respond to every situation. They were predictable because they valued honor and courage in combat. They would always choose direct confrontation over retreat, always choose formation flying over individual maneuvering. The human ships exploited these tendencies ruthlessly. A human destroyer would fire on a cruiser, then immediately flee. They would pursue, driven by pride and anger, but the human ship would lead them into a position where other ships were also pursuing from different angles. When they opened fire, they would hit each other as often as they hit the humans. The battle became chaos. Ships collided with each other, unable to maneuver effectively in tight formations. Their weapons, designed for overwhelming firepower, were too slow to track the quick human vessels. When they fired missiles, the humans would dodge behind disabled hulks, causing the missiles to destroy their own ships. It was not warfare. It was a demonstration of superior tactics and planning. The humans were teaching the lesson with every engagement. Raw power means nothing against preparation and precision. 4 hours later it was over. The fleet was shattered. Disabled ships drifted everywhere. The few vessels still functional were limping away, their commanders finally understanding that they could not win. Not a single human ship had been destroyed, though 23 had taken damage. But Admiral was not finished. They needed to understand that this defeat was not luck or chance. They needed to understand that humanity could have destroyed them completely, but chose not to. That restraint was its own form of power. "Activate Phase 2, she commanded. Across space, at the same instant, dozens of events occurred simultaneously. Military command centers lost power. Planetary defense grids went offline. Weapons factories experienced cascading system failures. Communication networks collapsed. For months, Captain stealth ships had been placing infiltration devices throughout territory. Small machines, each one designed for a specific purpose, all of them invisible to sensors. Now they activated, demonstrating that humanity could reach any part of the Empire whenever they wanted. The population panicked. Their military, which had seemed invincible, had been humiliated in battle. Their infrastructure, which had seemed secure, was vulnerable in ways they had never imagined. And worst of all, they now understood that humanity had been holding back. If the humans had wanted to kill them all, they could have. Instead, they chose to disable, to warn, to demonstrate capacity without using it fully. That was the most terrifying realization of all. On the Galactic Council station, Ambassador requested an emergency session. The council assembled quickly, many delegates having watched the battle through long-range sensors. They had seen the impossible happen. A small, young species had defeated a warrior empire that had conquered for 1,000 years. Stood before them, her expression serious but not triumphant. The Republic of Earth formally requests an immediate ceasefire and the beginning of peace negotiations. We have demonstrated that continuing this conflict serves no purpose. The Empire will withdraw all territorial claims in disputed space. In return, humanity will cease all military operations and provide technical assistance in rebuilding damaged systems. A new ambassador stood to respond. The old one, the one who had been so arrogant before, had been replaced. This new representative looked tired and shaken. The Empire requests time to consider these terms. The Crystal Elder rose once more, its ancient voice filling the chamber. I warned you. I told you never to drag humanity into war. You did not listen. Now you have learned what I already knew. Humans do not fight for glory or conquest. They fight to survive and protect what is theirs, and they are very, very good at it. The question now is whether you will accept their terms and rebuild, or whether you will force them to show you what happens when they stop being merciful. The ambassador looked around the chamber, seeing the expressions on every delegate's face. Fear, respect, relief that it was not their species that had made this mistake. He understood that they had no choice. Pride meant nothing when survival was at stake. The Empire accepts, he said quietly. We will negotiate. Admiral received the news and allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The war was not quite over yet, but the fighting was done. Now came the harder part, building a peace that would last. But for now, humanity had proven its point. They were not prey, they were not weak, and they would never be underestimated again. The peace talks began 3 weeks after the battle. The location was the same Galactic Council station where the war had started, a symbolic choice that was not lost on anyone. Ambassador led the human delegation, arriving with a small team of advisors. The Sent High Chancellor, an elderly statesman who had opposed the war from the beginning but had been overruled by younger, more aggressive voices. The first meeting was awkward. The delegation struggled to even look at the humans directly. In their culture, defeat in battle was shameful enough. But to be defeated so completely, so easily, was almost unbearable. They had come expecting to negotiate from weakness, to be humiliated and forced into harsh terms. What happened instead surprised them. Opened the session by placing a data crystal on the table between them. Before we discuss formal terms, the Republic of Earth wishes to return something to you. This crystal contains complete technical specifications for repairing all the systems we disabled in your ships and infrastructure. We took no pleasure in this conflict, and we have no interest in leaving you crippled. High Chancellor stared at the crystal as if it might explode. In culture, a victor did not help the defeated. You either killed your enemies or enslaved them. The concept of mercy followed by assistance was completely foreign to their experience. Why? Asked simply. You have one, we are at your mercy, why would you help us recover? His answer was sincere. Because humanity does not want broken enemies. We want peaceful neighbors. This war happened because of pride and miscommunication. We want to ensure it never happens again. The best way to do that is to help you rebuild so that our species can move forward together. The delegates conferred among themselves in their own language, their scales shifting through colors that indicated confusion and distrust. Finally, spoke again. What do you want in return for this generosity? What price do you demand? Peace, said. Just peace. We want the killing to stop. We want trade routes reopened. We want both our peoples to be able to sleep without fear. That is all we ask. Over the next 3 weeks, the framework for lasting peace slowly emerged. The negotiations were difficult, not because the humans demanded too much, but because they could not believe anyone would demand so little. They kept waiting for hidden demands, for secret clauses that would give humans control over territory. But those demands never came. The system would remain under human control, with the formally withdrawing all claims. But rather than keeping it as a military stronghold, the humans proposed turning it into a joint research station where both species could work together on mining technology and environmental restoration. The destroyed colonies would become memorials, reminders of the cost of war. They would pay reparations, but not in money or resources. Instead, they would contribute to cultural exchange programs, sending teachers and scholars to human worlds while accepting human advisors to help modernize their infrastructure. The goal was not punishment but understanding. Most importantly, the peace treaty included the creation of a new Galactic Council protocol. Any species considering military action would be required to submit to mandatory mediation first. Wars could still happen, but they would not happen because of pride or miscommunication. The protocol was named the Accords, after the system where the conflict had begun. President Minu addressed the people of Earth when the treaty was signed. He stood in the Great Hall of the Capitol building, sunlight streaming through windows behind him. "We did not choose this war," he said, his voice carrying to billions of listeners across human space. "But we ended it in a way that preserves not only our security but the possibility of future friendship. That is the human way. We do not fight to conquer. We fight to survive and to create a future where fighting is no longer necessary." The speech resonated with humanity's values, but not everyone was satisfied. Some voices argued that the humans had been too merciful, that they should have been made to suffer more for their aggression. Others worried that showing such restraint would be seen as weakness by other hostile species. Admiral addressed these concerns in a private briefing to Earth's leadership. "The people who think we were too soft do not understand the real lesson we taught. Yes, we could have destroyed them completely, but that would have made every other species in the galaxy fear us. They would have united against us eventually, seeing us as a threat that needed to be eliminated." She pulled up a galactic map, showing trade routes and political alliances. "Instead, we demonstrated something far more powerful. We showed that we can defeat any enemy, but we choose to build peace instead. That makes us valuable rather than threatening. Species will want us as allies because we are strong enough to protect them but restrained enough not to dominate them." Captain and his reconnaissance fleet quietly returned to their duties, their existence still largely unknown to the wider galaxy. In a ceremony attended only by top military leadership, he and his crews were decorated for their service. But the decorations would never be worn publicly, and the details of what they had done would remain classified. "The galaxy knows we are dangerous," told his officers. "They just do not know exactly how dangerous. That uncertainty is our greatest weapon. As long as potential enemies fear what they do not know about us, they will think twice before attacking." Engineer returned to civilian life, taking a position leading the reconstruction efforts in the system. He worked alongside engineers, teaching them human techniques while learning from their experience. The first time an engineer thanked him for his help, felt something unexpected. Hope. Maybe peace really was possible. Intelligence officer compiled a comprehensive after-action report that became required reading for all human military officers. Her analysis was brutally honest about both successes and failures. "We won this war because we were underestimated and because we prepared for threats others did not see. But we were also lucky. They made critical errors. They were overconfident and tactically inflexible. The next enemy might not make those mistakes. We must continue to evolve." The report's final section carried a warning. "The galaxy now knows we are capable of devastating warfare. Some species will respect that. Others will see it as a challenge. We must be prepared for the possibility that our victory over them makes us a target for other hostile powers. The price of peace is eternal vigilance." Weapons specialist took that warning seriously. He began developing the next generation of defensive systems, always thinking 3 steps ahead. "The weapons we used against thee are already outdated," he told his research team. "Potential enemies are studying that battle right now, learning from mistakes. By the time they are ready to test us, we need to be ready with entirely new capabilities they cannot predict." At the Galactic Council, the political landscape shifted dramatically. Species that had dismissed humanity as insignificant now actively sought trade agreements and diplomatic relations. Ambassador found her schedule filled with meeting requests from delegates who had never bothered speaking to her before. The Crystal Elder invited her to a private meeting in its chambers, a great honor rarely extended to any species. Surrounded by artifacts from civilizations long extinct, they discussed the future. "You have achieved something remarkable," the Elder said, its crystalline form reflecting rainbow light. "You won a war without creating eternal enemies. They respect you now. In their culture, strength is everything, and you demonstrated strength beyond their comprehension. But you also demonstrated wisdom by not using all that strength. That combination is rare." Accepted the compliment with a slight bow. "We learned from our own history. Humanity nearly destroyed itself multiple times before we reached the stars. We learned that total victory often leads to total destruction. We learned that the best wars are the ones that end quickly with paths to future cooperation." "And what will you do now?" the Elder asked. "Now that the galaxy knows what you are capable of?" Smiled slightly. "We will do what humans have always done. We will adapt. We will learn. We will build. And we will hope we never have to fight again. But if we do have to fight, the galaxy will remember this lesson. Do not drag humanity into war, because we will end it our way, and our way is to turn enemies into friends while making sure they never want to be enemies again." On the High Chancellor addressed his people. The speech was carefully crafted to save face while acknowledging reality. "We sought to test ourselves against a worthy opponent," he told the assembled crowds. "We learned that true strength lies not in conquest but in knowing when to fight and when to build. The humans taught us this lesson and we are stronger for it." It was political spin, reframing defeat as education. But it worked. Culture began to slowly shift, incorporating new values alongside their warrior traditions. Young increasingly sought education in fields beyond military service. Some even applied to study at human universities, eager to learn from the species that had defeated them so thoroughly. Trade between human and space flourished. Metallurgy combined with human engineering to create new alloys stronger than either species could produce alone. Cultural exchanges brought art to human worlds and human music to cities. Slowly, carefully, two species that had been enemies began to become something else. The galaxy watched and learned. The message was clear. Humanity would defend itself with devastating effectiveness when necessary, but they preferred peace when possible. That made them valuable allies and dangerous enemies. Exactly the reputation the humans wanted. 2 years passed since the war ended. The galaxy had settled into a new understanding of where humanity fit in the cosmic order. The change was not dramatic or sudden, but it was profound. Species that once saw humans as insignificant newcomers now treated them with careful respect. The system had been transformed. Where mining colonies once stood, a joint research facility now operated. Engineer led the human contingent, working alongside scientists to develop sustainable mining techniques that would not harm planetary environments. The work was slow but productive, and the partnership had produced innovations that benefited the entire Galactic Council. A young scientist named worked closely with his team. She had grown up hearing stories of military glory, but the war had changed her generation's perspective. "My parents still talk about the honor of battle," she told one day as they reviewed data from a test drill. "But I would rather build things than destroy them. Your people taught us there are many kinds of strength." Appreciated the sentiment but also felt the weight of responsibility. "Just remember that we did not want that war. We would have much preferred to work together from the beginning. Violence should always be the last option, not the first." On the High Chancellor had consolidated his political power by framing the peace as a strategic evolution rather than a surrender. The younger, more aggressive leaders who had pushed for war had been quietly removed from positions of authority. Culture was changing, slowly incorporating concepts of diplomacy and cooperation alongside their traditional warrior values. Gave a speech to the War Academy graduates, young who would lead their military in the coming decades. "Strength is not only measured in battle," he told them. "True strength includes knowing when not to fight. The humans defeated us not because they were stronger in raw power, but because they thought more carefully and prepared more thoroughly. Learn from this. Become warriors who use their minds as much as their claws. At Earth's Defense Force headquarters, Admiral reviewed intelligence reports with her senior staff. The threat assessment had changed significantly. While some species remained suspicious of humanity, most now viewed Earth as a stabilizing force in galactic politics. Several smaller species had approached human diplomats requesting defense cooperation agreements. "We need to be very careful about how we respond to these requests," warned her officers. "If we become the galaxy's military protector, we will accumulate enemies. Species with territorial ambitions will see us as the main obstacle to their expansion. We could end up fighting multiple wars simultaneously." Captain, now promoted to Admiral after the successful conclusion of the campaign, nodded in agreement. "Our strength lies in being strong enough to deter aggression, but not so dominant that we threaten others. We should help smaller species develop their own defenses rather than simply offering to defend them ourselves." The strategy was subtle but important. Humanity would share defensive technology and tactical training with allied species, making them harder targets without creating dependency. This approach built goodwill without overextending human military resources. Intelligence Officer, now Director of Strategic Analysis, had expanded her operations significantly. Her teams worked closely with other Council species, sharing information about emerging threats while carefully guarding humanity's most sensitive capabilities. She had built a reputation for honest, accurate assessments that did not sugarcoat difficult truths. When a border dispute between two Council species threatened to escalate into violence, the Council requested analysis. She provided a blunt report. "Both sides believe they can achieve their objectives through limited military action. Both are wrong. If this escalates, it will draw in allies and potentially destabilize the entire region. Neither side will truly win, and both will suffer casualties they cannot afford." Her recommendation was direct. Humanity should mediate aggressively, backed by the implicit understanding that if forced to intervene militarily, we will side with whichever party seems more reasonable. Neither side wants to face human intervention, so the threat should be enough to bring them to negotiations. The Council followed her advice. The dispute was resolved through mediation, and both species emerged with their pride intact and their relationship preserved. It was a small victory, but it reinforced the idea that humanity's military capability could be used to prevent wars, not just win them. Ambassador had become one of the most influential voices on the Galactic Council. When she spoke, other delegates listened because humanity had demonstrated that its words carried weight. She used this influence carefully, building coalitions around issues that benefited the wider galactic community. She spearheaded an initiative to create a council-wide rapid response force for humanitarian crises. Natural disasters, pandemics, environmental catastrophes, all required coordinated action across species lines. Humanity contributed significant resources and expertise to the force, but insisted it remain truly multilateral, with command rotating between species. "This is how we demonstrate that human military capability serves the greater good," explained to President Minu during a secure communication. "Every time our ships respond to a disaster and save lives, we reinforce the message that we are protectors, not conquerors." The Crystal Elder watched these developments with ancient satisfaction. In a rare public statement, the being addressed the full council. The human approach to galactic politics reveals wisdom that took most species to develop. They could have leveraged their military victory into territorial expansion or political dominance. Instead, they chose to strengthen institutions that constrain all species equally. This suggests they understand a fundamental truth. Long-term security comes from fair rules consistently applied, not from temporary military superiority. But not everyone appreciated the new order. A coalition of species that had profited from the old system of constant minor conflicts began working against human influence. They spread rumors that humanity's weapons technology violated Council conventions. They claimed human stealth capabilities were fundamentally destabilizing. They suggested Earth was positioning itself as a future dictator of galactic affairs. President Minu, now in his second term, decided to address these concerns directly. He requested time to speak before the full Galactic Council, and every delegate attended. The chamber was packed with representatives from 200 worlds, all wanting to hear how humanity would respond to the accusations. Minu spoke clearly and without notes. There are those who claim humanity seeks to dominate the galaxy. Let me be absolutely clear. We do not. We seek security for ourselves and stability for the galaxy because both serve our interests. We shared our technology with the because a recovered empire makes a better trading partner than a resentful enemy plotting revenge. He paused, letting his words settle. But I will also be honest about our capabilities. Yes, humanity has developed weapons and tactics that many find unsettling. We did so because we learned, long before reaching the stars, that the universe does not reward the unprepared. We will not apologize for our competence. However, we commit to using it only in defense and in accordance with Council law. The day we break that commitment is the day we lose our legitimacy. The speech was carefully balanced between reassurance and subtle reminder of human capabilities. Most delegates responded positively, but a few species remained suspicious. Minu expected that. You could not please everyone, and trying to do so would only make you look weak. After the speech, met with Minu privately. That was risky. You essentially admitted we are more dangerous than most species realize. Minu nodded. The rumors were spreading anyway. Better to control the narrative. There is a certain comfort in dealing with a neighbor who is obviously dangerous but demonstrably principled, rather than wondering if they are secretly weak or secretly planning betrayal. 5 years after the war, humanity had achieved a delicate balance. They were respected but not feared in a paralyzing way. Their military was known to be formidable but was rarely deployed. Their diplomacy was aggressive but fair. Their technology was advanced but increasingly shared with allies. The Accords had prevented 3 potential wars through mandatory mediation. The Council's humanitarian response force had saved millions of lives across a dozen species during natural disasters. Trade routes were safer than they had been in centuries. Scientific collaboration flourished as species worked together on projects that benefited everyone. Engineer, weapons specialist, intelligence director, admiral, and admiral all continued their work. They understood that peace required constant maintenance. The galaxy was a dangerous place, and humanity's survival depended on remaining vigilant while appearing approachable. Captain, who had delivered the final warning to the fleet before the war began, now commanded humanity's first deep space exploration vessel. Her mission was to chart unknown regions of the galaxy, searching for new worlds and new species. She carried a simple message from Earth to any intelligent life she encountered. Humanity comes in peace, but we are prepared to defend ourselves and our allies if necessary. On Earth, in the archives where humanity kept its most important historical records, a copy of the Crystal Elder's original warning was preserved. Never drag humanity into war. They will end it their way. Next to it, a newer annotation had been added by historians analyzing the conflict. They proved this truth not through cruelty but through competence, not through conquest but through creating conditions where peace became the only rational choice. They demonstrated that the most dangerous weapon is not the one that destroys most efficiently, but the one that makes others choose not to fight at all. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity was not to be trifled with, not because they were the strongest or the most numerous, but because they approached conflict with a deadly combination of preparation, precision, and principled restraint. They were a species that could wage devastating war but chose to build enduring peace. In council chambers, in military academies, in diplomatic training centers across 100 worlds, the war became a case study. Young officers and diplomats studied the conflict, learning how humanity had turned every disadvantage into an advantage, how they had used psychology as effectively as weapons, how they had won the war before the first shot was fired, simply by preparing more thoroughly than anyone thought possible. And in human space, admirals summarized the lesson in a classified briefing to new Defense Force recruits. We do not start wars. We do not seek glory in battle. But if someone forces us to fight, we will demonstrate why that was the worst decision they ever made. Not through revenge or excessive violence, but through showing them that continuing the fight is pointless. That is the human way. We end wars by making peace the only logical option. Remember that, and you will serve humanity well. The galaxy had found a new equilibrium, one where humanity played a crucial role as both protector and bridge builder. The future remained uncertain, as it always did. But for now, in this moment, peace prevailed, and humanity stood ready to defend it.